Okay, well, anyway, we're together now.
Wonderful. It's lovely to hear you. It's interesting to know what your accent was like.
That's right, yeah, well, it's probably not very Liverpudlian. In fact, I'm having a hard time understanding you.
I'll talk slower for you. That's terrible, isn't it?
Sounds funny.
Yeah, well, because I grew up in the Dingle.
Oh, in the Dingle, that's where
Ringo.
Richie.
Yeah.
Ringo lives, yeah. Yeah, well, I lived in Wavertree.
Which is just down the road from me.
Yeah, by the clock tower.
Yeah, I know it well.
Park,
yeah, I know it well. Well, Dovedale School, where George and I think Peter went to, I'm the chair of the governors there.
Dovedale Road?
Yep. It's a lovely school. Have you ever seen the entry register for George when he started there?
I don't. I may have done, because people keep sending me stuff from all over the place. Anything that had George's name on it, shooting through from outer space.
Yeah.
But yeah, it probably did. Yeah.
Because I would say I absolutely loved your book. Absolutely loved it.
Oh, good.
Oh, it's fabulous. So I'll be doing a review for the British Beatles fan club.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good.
So I can post the links for people to get it.
Good.
But it was fascinating, and it had a lot in there which, as a Liverpudlian, I was so glad was in there, because the family background, because it was obviously it was tough for your parents, and I was interested when you started talking about you referred to your mum as a frugal mother.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. Well, I'm 83 now.
Yeah.
Well, that's only Earth years. That has nothing to do with me.
Yes, it's just a number, isn't it?
It's just a number, yeah. Yeah.
So do you have a lot of very clear memories of your childhood living in Arnold Grove?
Oh, yes, yeah. In fact, I can close my eyes now and see the Picton Clock and the Lamb Hotel that was right across the road from it, and the Barley Mow, which was another pub. Because in Liverpool, you pretty well to tell somebody how to get somewhere by which pub it's near.
Correct. We still do.
Yeah, sure.
That hasn't changed at all. What do you remember back? Because I know, because I sometimes take people on Beatles tours as well, and we go to Arnold Grove, and they show me it's such a small house for there's 6 of you to be in there. But what is your real impression of being such a tight space as a family?
Well, back then that was all we knew, so we didn't even realize it was a tiny space. It's only been since I've lived in bigger houses that, in fact, I think when I went away to college to Newcastle on Tyne, I was at St Mary's College.
Yeah.
And when I got back for my Christmas holiday, I remember walking into the kitchen and saying, "Wow, this place shrunk," because it seemed so tiny to me after I'd been away. But just growing up there, you're not used to anything else, and so that's the norm. If that's how you're brought up, that's what's normal to you. And so it doesn't seem strange because that's what you're used to.
Yeah, and what was it like sharing a bedroom with 3 brothers?
Fine. Because again, I didn't know anything.
Because you don't know any difference.
There was such a thing as having a room to yourself,
Yeah. I'm glad you said it, because that's sort of how I try and describe it to people and say, because that's how the whole area is, then you just accept what you've got. You think that's the norm, don't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and we were really a happy family because, Mum and Dad were great.
Yeah.
And Mum was always full of fun and, making us laugh about everything. Dad was nice and calm and easygoing and, so we were so happy that we were not deprived in any way because we had such a happy life. Let's face it, in my later life, or all through my life, I've known people, well, like even my brother George,
Yep.
with his mansion. He wasn't as happy as he was when he was in Arnold Grove.
That was, I wondered that, because I know something that's obviously very important to you is your family.
Yeah.
And that's what made sort of working class neighbourhoods so special.
That's right, yeah.
And so did you know all the neighbours really well?
No. That was
Right.
one of the things. My mum didn't allow us to mix with the rest of the people in the neighborhood.
Oh, right.
Yeah. She kept us very. We were not allowed to go out and play with the kids in the neighborhood. She felt that they were a bunch of ruffians.
Right. Okay. Oh, so who did you see? Just friends from school?
Well, there again, when I was let me see. When I went to grade school, the first few years, of course, before the war got started, I was at the school just down the street from Arnold Grove.
Yeah, the Our Lady Good Health.
Yeah, then when the war started, I was evacuated to Wales. And then when I came back from there, the school had been bombed, and so we went to a convent in the neighborhood, and we were taught by the nuns. And then I went to a council school in Lawrence Road Council School.
Oh, did you?
Because Mom felt that we weren't getting a very good education at the Catholic school, the parish school. It was all the catechism and all that kind of stuff, So she wanted us to be well educated. And so I went to the council school, and there I just absolutely, shot up to being the top of the class and everything, and won scholarships and what have you. So by getting a good education, I got much further ahead. Sure. And then, I won scholarships to high school and again then to college as well.
Yeah.
So, that was a good move on my mum's part. Yeah. They had some really good teachers. They had this, of course, it was like a junior school. It wasn't a high school.
Yeah.
And the headmistress there was a Mrs. Edwards, and my teacher was a Miss Pritchard. But they were really, really good teachers.
Mm. Yeah, I did. It was a good school. So was that a deliberate choice by your mum not to keep you in a Catholic school?
Yeah, well, Mum and Dad both,
Yeah.
It was just, they just felt that, we weren't really getting prepared for life in the world so much as getting prepared to become a nun.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because it's interesting because my father was a Protestant vicar down in the Dingle.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I've written a couple of books on the Beatles and Liverpool. And one of the things I've told them about is this ridiculous Catholics Protestants thing, which you touch on in the book. It's nonsense argument.
The Catholics and the proddy dogs.
Yeah. And the other one we had was, because I was a proddy dog, was the left-footers. The Catholics were called the left-footers.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we had that one as well. And it was just, as you say, how do you explain that to a child? They're supposed to both be of a Christian faith, but they're arguing and hating each other.
I know. Yeah. And then, when you think of the way the world is today with this ISIS and everybody, the whole thing about religion has just really made the world a horrible place to live in. If they just forget about having to have a God that everybody has to fear. You have to be in fear of the Lord and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
If they get rid of that, people maybe could just relax and be happy with each other,
Well, it's like I say to my children, I say, what's important is faith. Faith is personal. Religion is man-made.
Yeah.
And they come up with this list of rules and regulations you have to follow, which some people have sat down somewhere and decided, oh, we'll do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe, I don't know, but maybe as we get more advanced in technology and and science, and understanding more about how the planet got started and how we developed, maybe people will start realizing that we don't need to be all divided on whose God is the best,
Yeah.
Who's got the best God?
Yeah, and
it's just so silly, you know.
it is. Well, it's interesting because one of the things what I mentioned about George's registry entry into Dovedale School is one of the things I picked up on years ago was when he puts his name, date of birth, no address, etc. In the right-hand little column, you could choose to be excluded from daily religious assembly. And George was about the only one where your mum and dad had put yes. And so he wouldn't have to go into the daily religious assembly in school.
Yeah. Which did him a lot of good eventually because he was open-minded enough to realize that, you know, there's different ways of looking at things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, if you're doing that from the age of 4, and obviously that carried on until the Liverpool Institute as well, then
that's right, yeah.
I think, it just sort of says, well, no, you don't have to follow all these silly rules.
Yeah.
So, and again, that comes back to your parents. And that's one of the wonderful things that comes through in your book is, so, you know, these different ideals and values that they instilled in you children of how to be open-minded, how to be open and honest.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, one of the great things, too, that my dad did for me was, I mentioned in there about, you know, doing the IQ test and coming out with a really high score.
Yeah.
And his attitude about that was, and if you read the book, you know what he said, was that, you know, you're no more, what's the word, responsible for that than you are for having green eyes. It was a gift that you were given. Yeah. And so you can't go around bragging that you have a high IQ. You've got to use that IQ wisely and do with it, you know, the best that you possibly can. That was his attitude, you know.
Which is fantastic and very forward-thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we were really fortunate to have parents that were, you know, as, I don't know, sensible as they were, really.
Very level-headed.
Yeah. But then I think, you know, it wasn't that different for a lot of the people in Liverpool. Were very similar, you know, to working-class people. They didn't have high ideas about, you know, they didn't go around bragging about themselves. They were just down to earth, and they did the best they could with what they had, and, you know, and that was that.
And it's like, as you're saying, with the attitude during the war. Yeah, come on. Yeah. Is that all you've got? Bring it on. We can take it.
Exactly. You think you're going to scare us?
Yeah. I mean, that must have been, I know there's like you're strong enough into, but it must have been scary at first with the air raids and the bombs, etc.
Well, there again, we weren't really in the mood to be scared.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that I don't ever put it in the book, but I was invited. I was at a big rally that Michael Moore was giving in this country a number of years ago. Yep. He was giving an anti-war rally, and I was at that rally, and he invited me to, you know, to get up and say a few words, and I did, and I related the little episode that had happened with us when we were kids, when we'd all been, you know, in the schoolyard saying, oh, the Germans go, we'll tear them limb from limb and all this stuff, you know. Yeah. And that night when the air raid started, I started on about tearing them limb from limb, you know, and my mum was laughing, and she said, no, she said, that's not the way to look at it. And she gets into, she says, well, you know, Uncle Eddie and Uncle Jimmy, and they were both in the Guards, in the Coldstream Guards. And she said, remember how they used to take you to the park, take you rowing on the lake on Sefton Park? I said, yeah, and I thought, what's that got to do with these people who are bombing us, you know? And she said, well, you know, those fellows up in those planes, they're probably somebody's Uncle Eddie and Uncle Jimmy, and they probably far rather be taking their nieces and nephews out to rowing on the lake than being up in those planes, dropping bombs on people they don't know and getting shot at.
Exactly.
And I thought, wow, I mean, what a wise, you know, sensible thing. And she said, it's not the soldiers that make wars, it's the people that make the bombs that make the wars.
Exactly. And you made one of the points in there about, which I've been saying, totally agree with, which is It's these people in government somewhere who have the arguments and start the wars. Just get them, stick them in a room, let them just slug it out.
Yeah.
And then...
that used to be part of some of the ancient civilizations, was that, you take the two leaders and put them in a boxing ring and let them go at it. And that's far more sensible than taking thousands of people from their homes and, killing them. But of course, now that they have all, airplanes and bombs and God knows what, but the people who manufacture them have got to make their money somehow, so they've got to have another war,
It's scary, isn't it? You think, well, why can't they learn from history?
Yeah. But, when you stop and think about it, the human species is really a pathetic bunch of idiots.
Oh, completely. Yeah, exactly.
You've got a smattering of intelligence sprinkled throughout the species, but it's such a small spot, and especially now, the more we, overproduce ourselves, the more the, what is it called, the dumbing down of the species.
Oh, completely. I call it survival of the thickest.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, though, we're producing more and more low intelligence, creatures, and they don't have the sense to even question what's going on around them. And, they're just like, like the drone in the beehive. Yeah. The ones that just do the worker bees or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It is quite scary, isn't it? But I thought the way you dealt with Liverpool during the war, I thought was fabulous. Because in this country, they still talk about the Blitz spirit, only referring to London.
That's true, yeah.
And Liverpool had so much to put up with. But I think, rightly so, your mum and dad come out as such intelligent, forward-thinking, and lovely people.
Yeah.
And I think that it's absolutely tremendous, and you can see then the effect that it's had on you as the children.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was important, there's so many people across the world, Beatle fans, who think George is wonderful. And I thought, well, it's only fair that we should give credit where it's due and let people know that it was my parents that created or helped to form this wonderful man that everybody thinks is so wonderful. He didn't just come by that all by himself,
Exactly. Well, that's why I mentioned I got my friend Mike, he's actually from Dublin. And he's been so fascinated really on that subject. He's looking at all the important women in the lives of the Beatles. And I was telling him about your book, and he's so excited to talk to you because that's what he really wants to find out so much about, is the influence of your mum and what her life was like and how she affected, because it is so important. And that's why I think the way you've done the book is absolutely lovely. And thankfully, and I know you mentioned, John, you didn't want to do this sensational book, but I can tell you 99% of Beatles fans don't want a sensationalist, made-up book.
Yeah.
This is what they want to read, honestly.
Yeah, it's real, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was what, I'm with a very, very small publishing company, and they don't really have the resources to, to get out and publicize it.
No.
But they were the only ones that wanted to publish something. I had a literary agent. He went around all of the big guys, all the big publishers, and all they were asking was, does she have any dirt on the Beatles?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm here to help you.
Enough books being published trying to invent some dirt on the Beatles.
It is. And I love the fact that you've addressed a lot of the myths as well.
Yeah.
Which is really good, because there's one, I know you mentioned towards the end of the book about the B&B, and the whole idea you've been chased around by a British journalist trying to dig up dirt about the rift, supposedly between you and George. And the thing is, those kind of stories get out and get passed around.
Oh, yeah. And they get legs of their own.
Yeah, what they do. Because they're the kind of bits that people pass on.
Yeah.
I think,
So, like I say, in that part, too, it makes George, George has always talked about unconditional love.
Yeah.
And how you love people if they're part of especially if you're part of your family, you love them even if they don't necessarily behave well. But, you know, it makes him sound like he was just a real shallow, mean-spirited person.
Yeah.
If he would have, you know, done to me what he did deliberately. You know, I think he was, in fact, I'm pretty sure that the whole, what do they call it now, the Harrison Family Trust or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever they are.
Ran, you know,
Yeah.
They just didn't want any of the family to have anything. They wanted to take it all for themselves, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of problem that Julian Lennon's come across with Yoko having so much control.
Yeah. And I mean, all she did in the first place, I didn't say this in the book because I figured she'd assassinate me.
Yeah.
But George was furious with her because she got John hooked on heroin early on, so that she could have complete control over him, you know.
Yeah, which is so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was fairly careful about what I said because I didn't want people coming after me or my family, you know.
Yeah. I think you worded it very diplomatically indeed, that if you want to read between the lines, you can understand what you're saying, but you've not actually said anything that's libelous or scandalous at all.
Yeah.
Handled that one very nicely. So I don't think...
Thanks to that intelligence that I was gifted with.
Exactly. Again, you can see your parents' influence there. Very, very good.
Yeah. So
let me say, I made a list of notes as I was going through the book. It was absolutely fascinating. And of course, you answered in a very honest way, because I'd always wondered, how did this girl from Wavertree end up in America? And obviously, you've told the story of your first marriage, which must have been painful for you to sit down and do. And it's very, very honest. You know, and full credit for doing that. Must have been difficult for you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I didn't want to reveal all of that, but I thought, well, if I tell it and somebody learns from it, somebody else, you know, realizes, okay, what's making me think I'm in love is just my hormones.
Yeah.
You know, you've chosen the wrong person, or the wrong person's come along and kind of, done some magic at you, you know.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, wow, this is love, you know. But I think, you know, the whole thing, too, about our culture, where we're always desperate, you know, it's always all these forms that you fill in. They always want to know the name of your spouse as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like there's got to be two of you. And, you know, I think the whole thing is when we come onto this planet is we're not really looking for another person. What we're looking for, what we need for fulfillment, is to find our way back to the Creator.
Yeah.
One way that George kind of explained when he was getting, you know, some spiritual kind of learning, and he said, if you could imagine that God is an ocean and that we are just individual drops in that ocean, that, you know, as an individual drop, you're not very powerful. But if you get back into the ocean, then you're part of the whole thing. You're part of God again, and you have much more power, you know. You've completed yourself once you get back to being part of the ocean. So, you know, I've always thought that's really what we're looking for. We're not really looking for another woman or another man. We're looking to get back to be part of God.
Yeah, and I think there's I think maybe particularly in the 20th century, of selling this ideal of you're not a fulfilled, proper person unless you're in a relationship.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I feel far more fulfilled once I got myself single.
Well, exactly, and I know some lovely ladies go to our church, been single all their life, but have had such a rich and wonderful life.
Yeah, wow.
And you think, exactly that. You have to be careful, as you say, just because the hormones kick in doesn't make them right.
Exactly, yeah.
No.
You know, the thing is, once you realize that that's what it is, it's driving you.
Yeah.
but it's just your hormones.
Yeah.
Because back when I was, when I was that age, we didn't even know that there were such things as hormones.
But it wasn't talked about, was it?
No. Didn't know about anything.
No. Yeah. But I know that must have been difficult for you to do. But it sort of it completes the story, and it's how you end up out there, and everything does happen for a reason. And
oh yeah.
then when sort of I like the way you started chapter 0, and then I thought that was brilliantly done. That was very clever, because it's almost sort of with some of the stuff Beatles fans will want to know first of all. So you've given some of the headlines, but then you need to read the rest to get the full story.
That's right, yeah.
And it's amazing.
Thank you. I really appreciate your comments, because when you're doing something like that, you're not sure that you. In fact, I thought I'd probably get burned at the stake,
No, not at all.
That still could happen. It still could happen. There's still people that will read it that will say, "Oh, we got to kill this witch,"
I cannot see anybody taking it. Genuine Beatles fans, people who are interested, of taking any offence or be worried about anything that you've written and how you've done it.
Yeah. The Beatles fans probably won't, but people like we've got in Congress and in the Senate in this country, all the billionaires that don't want to pay taxes, they're not going to like it.
Well, tough. They can read your disclaimer at the back.
They probably won't even read it anyway, so I'll be okay.
No, because they'll have somebody to read it for them, won't they?
Yeah.
Yes. They have
probably who cares about what a Beatles sister says? That would be their attitude.
Yes.
She's got no money, so how important can she be?
I mean, it's nice because all the way through, you've got some strong opinions on lots of different subjects, which is really nice. And at times, you almost talk like a politician. Were you ever tempted? Ever tempted to think that you would like to have been a politician?
Not specifically, but I have, my dad kept me very, very much informed in what was going on, world affairs. And especially like when he was in the union.
Absolutely,
when he was the union treasurer, And he was really upset at the way the guys were being misled and, come out on a strike again, come out. The unions were necessary to protect the guys, but they just took it too far.
Yeah.
And, so from all of those kind of things that I've been aware of with my dad, I haven't exactly gotten involved. Well, I'm not even a citizen over here. I'm still British.
Yeah.
But, so I've never become actually involved in politics, but I have always been vocal about supporting the views that I agree with.
Yeah.
And, because right now, I would say that the two major parties in this country, the ones that don't want to give anybody anything and the ones that want to give everybody everything,
yes.
I'm kind of halfway between them,
Yeah.
I would like to see help given to people who are poor, but not to the extent that you pay them for each child that they get.
Yeah.
Because that's encouraging them to have more kids than you can possibly look after.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a happy medium, and unfortunately we don't seem to be able to get to that.
No.
It really is tough.
Yeah.
And especially in this country now, when they've passed laws that corporations can give as much money as they want. The whole thing is that these political campaigns, like in England, they go on for 6 weeks. Here they go on for like 6 years.
I know, it's incredible.
As soon as somebody's elected, they start having campaigns for the next president.
Yeah, it is. And the millions that go behind the campaigns.
I know. They could feed all the poor people in the country.
Exactly. Imagine how much good they could do with that money.
Yeah.
But when we come to power, when we come to power, we'll put them straight.
Yeah, not going to happen.
No. So a bit of chapter 0 and fast forwarding. All the help that you started to give in 1963 to try and help the Beatles records get promoted, and it was lovely to see the correspondence that you had there with Brian and with Dick James and some of the others, those letters going backwards and forwards. Because it was paving the way, wasn't it, for what they needed to be done.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, because, those guys over in England, especially like Brian, as he admits in his own book, he was considered the failure of the family,
Yeah.
And they put him in charge of the record department as some place where he couldn't do any harm.
Yes, yes.
So he didn't know anything about business.
No.
But I was studying everything that was going on over here because it's so different. You have, in England, you just got the BBC.
Yes.
And, you get your music played by the BBC, that's all you need. But over here, there's so many thousands different radio stations.
Oh, exactly.
And they all had a little chunk of area that they covered,
Yeah.
So I knew that they would never get national coverage unless they got a major record label after them or some major, clout behind them. Yeah. And so those are all the things that I was telling the people over in England, what you needed to do in order to get something happening.
Yeah, and it was obviously, it was vital.
Yeah.
Particularly when you said about going down to the address where VJ Records was, and it was like abandoned.
Yeah, it was just like a bomb site, except, there'd never been any bombs in St. Louis.
Yeah. That must have been a bit scary for Brian to read, but very important as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think, like you were also mentioning about getting on the Ed Sullivan Show as well, weren't you?
Yeah, because we started watching that. That was the major thing on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And he had all kinds of different, everything you can think of, from performing fleas, to mice that could talk and all kinds of stuff, So if he could get on that, he could be seen by everybody,
Yeah. But I was thinking, in '63, of course, George came out with Peter to come and see you. Now, you'd done a fair bit of travelling and sort of settled down. But this, I assume, was this George's first trip abroad?
Oh, yeah.
It was, yeah. So,
well, he'd been to Jersey, to the Channel Islands.
Yeah, and he'd been to Hamburg.
Yeah. But he hadn't been across the Atlantic before.
No. So what did he make of the US when he got there? When he got to Benton, what did he make of everything?
Well, he was just, very, very excited and just, not excited, but he was, amazed at how different it was.
Yeah.
But he also found, that the people were really friendly and kind. And nobody knew anything about him being anybody other than the fact that he was my brother,
Yeah.
And that we were the new people in town that had come from.
Of course.
We'd been in Canada, we'd been in South America, so we were considered rather exotic, And then here comes my kid brother, And so that was interesting, but they didn't recognize that he was sort of famous in England, and he didn't want that to be known anyway. He was trying to have a quiet holiday.
Yeah. But of course, you managed to get him up on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, that was quite accidental.
Yeah.
But first live performance of a Beatle in the United States at the VFW Club.
That's it. I loved you say he could have been the fifth vest.
Yeah.
Thought that was a lovely comment. I love that one. There's so many fifth Beatles. To get into something you mentioned as well, because I was Murray the K, wasn't it?
Oh God, that week. Yeah, he was just so self-promoting.
Yeah.
Of course, for us from Britain too, it was even more disgusting because we're not into that.
Yeah.
But it's very much the American way, to push yourself and be aggressive and, aggressive salesmanship and all that kind of stuff. So for us, coming from Britain, it was kind of rather tasteless.
Yeah.
To be constantly pushing yourself and showing, I'm Murray the K and I'm this and I'm that, because we don't do that,
No, exactly. So, it's almost the opposite sometimes.
Yeah, we're so self-effacing that we sometimes disappear, Like in my case, I disappeared off the face of the money tree.
Yes.
But that's okay,
Yeah,
I've found that you can be far more wealthy by having good friends than by having a lot of money. Because George found that out,
Yeah. That must have been hard because, I mean, it must have been. I know you mentioned one of the incidents. I think it was in Chicago in '64, where there was the man on the fire escape, and and George being so scared, and just have been able to watch some of the film footage of them being mobbed everywhere.
Yeah.
It must have been. I think you mentioned as well of being protective of your little brother. It must have been quite scary.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
And
especially like him getting out that night, we were on, I think, the 11th floor of the hotel, and he has to go down the fire escape, and they could have fallen, anything could have happened,
It must have been very scary for them, considering of where they come from in Liverpool, because it is still a small provincial town. We're not a big city at all, are we? That suddenly to have all that adulation and the pressure, it can't have been easy. Can't have been nice at times.
Yeah, and then with all the predators coming after them,
Exactly. They all wanted a piece.
Yeah. That was. That's one of the things I say to people now. Because a lot of people know that my pension got cut off and all that kind of stuff, and have this tendency to maybe feel sorry for me. I said, hey, I don't have to worry about who my friends are. I said, because if somebody wants to be my friend, they're my friend because they like me, not because I'm going to buy them a Porsche next week.
Exactly.
I said, at least I have the people around me that I hang out with are sincere.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry, what they're going to steal from me because I've got nothing they can steal from me anyway. I'm in a far better position than George was.
Well, and that's just it. And, the size of Friar Park and of almost being like a prisoner in there, particularly obviously after that guy attacked him. It must have been scary, and it doesn't matter how much money you've got to have that kind of existence. It can't have been easy. That's one of the things that John Lennon always said that he liked about New York was the ability to walk down the street and not
just being amongst everybody. Be anonymous.
Yeah. It must have been tough, and again, I like the way that you've shown that the money didn't matter, and even when you joke that you won't do the lottery just in case you become a millionaire.
I was terrified. Like I say, I won't buy a raffle ticket or those things. be smitten with millionairedom.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the lovely thing that comes through the whole book is, no matter how long you've been away from Liverpool, it still reads to me as if a Liverpool person is writing the book, is telling the story.
Oh, great. That's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, because I recognise those bits of humour, so I can certainly tell, like with something about being a millionaire, when you put those certain lines, I'm chuckling to myself, because I can just imagine, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And I think so again, it comes over as a lovely personal account, not one of these bland, ghost-written, horrible books, and there's lots of them out there, which people write just to make money. It comes through as a personal, it's a personal story.
Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that, you can get the word out to the people that might enjoy it.
Oh, I will, don't you worry.
George was upset about the idea of people talking about him,
Yeah.
And I would talk about him as a Beatle, but I never ever talked about his, his childhood.
Yeah.
Because I felt, that was the only time he had to himself. But I thought, well, okay. And, let's face it, there was somebody urging him to not like me. Somebody who had forced her way into his life.
Yeah.
So, I knew there was somebody trying to talk him out of any family ties.
Right.
And so, that was another reason I thought, well, okay, if somebody's trying to blacken me in his eyes, at least I stop going to the place that he's a bit concerned about.
Yeah.
And that shows that I'm on his side,
Yeah, sure.
I just like people, if they get the book, I'd like people to be able to enjoy it and to understand a bit better, how George became the kind of person that everybody admired.
Yeah. I'm sure that will come through. Because I'd say it's a lovely, lovely book. And I love the bits where, the Beatles fans will love, it's the fact he had like a bit of a radio career, with doing your reports. I mean, that must have been fun. That must have been fun to do.
That was, yeah. And the book that you got, it does have the pictures on the back as well, pictures of him taken in Benton.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the publisher did a wonderful job, because most books, they just have a plain blue or grey, the actual book itself.
Yeah, yeah.
But he actually put the pictures for the book back itself, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's a beautifully done book as well.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, I've enjoyed it too.
Good.
And hey, I've started to, since the beginning of our conversation, I can understand you much better. I've gotten my ear tuned back to the Liverpool accent.
Oh, good. That's what I like to hear. Good. I always brought some nice memories back, but it's been a great pleasure to talk to you, and I genuinely do love the book, and
okay.
I will do everything I can to help you.
Yeah, when you send me an email, send me a picture of you, okay?
Okay, that'll scare you. So
well, it won't scare you as much as a picture of me sending you. See, that's what I always keep telling people about Liverpudlian act. That the first thing we learn is how to make fun of ourselves.
Oh, exactly. You learn to fight with your mouth before you fight with your fists.
Yeah, it's funny because I keep making remarks about being a scary-looking old lady, and people will say, "Oh, but you're not that bad." I don't think I'm that bad. I'm just joking.
I know where you're coming from. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. I'll have to come back to Liverpool to get back into my old.
Oh yeah. Oh, you should do.
Again.
Oh,
yeah.
you should do.
Okay.
Thanks, Louise.
Cheerio.
Take care of yourself. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.